Welcome, my friends. Gather close, get comfortable, and let me tell you a story. But before we begin, let's have a quick, honest chat. If you want the full continuation of these stories, more uncensored 18-plus Ancient BL content, extended scenes, and unlimited royal forbidden romance, you can join us on Patreon at SpicyAncientBL. As a storyteller, I want to give you everything. Every heated glance, every secret touch, every raw, passionate moment behind closed palace doors. But YouTube does not allow us to show or monetize everything freely here, so the deeper, darker, and much more intense versions are waiting for you there. You can find the link in the description and pinned comment. Come find me when you're ready for the real heat. Now, close your eyes for just a second. Breathe in. Imagine the scent of burning sandalwood, heavy and sweet, mixing with the sharp, metallic smell of a brewing storm. Picture the sprawling courtyards of the great Yan Empire, bathed in the silver light of a crescent moon. The roofs are curved like the wings of resting dragons. The silk banners flutter in the cold night wind. It is a place of absolute beauty, and absolute imprisonment. At the center of this golden cage lives Crown Prince Jian. Prince Jian is 24 years old. He is a man carved from ice and jade. Tall, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of an empire, and eyes as dark and unforgiving as a starless sky. People say he has no heart. They say the emperor, a cruel and paranoid man, carved the warmth out of his son's chest a long time ago. Jian moves through the palace like a ghost in crimson silk. He doesn't smile. He doesn't show mercy. He is the perfect, untouchable heir. But tonight, a crack is about to form in his perfect world. The rain begins to fall, drumming heavily against the wooden verandas. Inside the grand throne room, lit by 100 flickering candles, Prince Jian kneels before his father, the emperor. Standing beside the emperor's throne is a young man, a prisoner. His name is Kael. Kael is 22, but his eyes look like they have lived 1,000 lifetimes of war. He is the last surviving royal of the Wei Kingdom, a kingdom the Emperor of Yan burned to the ground just 3 months ago. Kael's silver-white hair falls in jagged strands over his bruised, sharp cheekbones. His wrists are bound in heavy iron chains that clink softly in the quiet room. He is stripped of his royal titles, dressed in the dark, rough robes of a common shadow guard. Yet, there is nothing common about the way he stands. He does not bow his head. His golden eyes burn with a feral, quiet fury. He looks like a starved wolf chained in a room full of fat, arrogant lords. "My son," the emperor's voice slithers through the room, dripping with malicious amusement. "You have complained that your shadow guards are too slow. Too weak, so I have brought you a new toy, the fallen Prince of Wei. They say he was the deadliest blade in the north." Jian does not look up. His voice is smooth, perfectly controlled. "You are giving me an enemy royal to watch my back, imperial father. A man who wishes to see our family dead?" "Exactly," the emperor laughs, a dry, rattling sound. "Keep him on a tight leash, Jian. Break his spirit. Use him as your shield. If he tries to kill you, it will only prove you are not careful enough to be emperor. Consider him a test." Jian slowly rises to his feet. The crimson silk of his royal robes rustles softly in the dead quiet of the room. He finally turns his gaze to Kael. For a long moment, the two men just look at each other. The air in the room suddenly feels too thick to breathe. It's like two predators circling each other in the dark. Jian's dark, cold eyes lock onto Kael's burning, golden ones. There is so much unspoken violence in that single look, so much hatred. But underneath the hatred, there is a spark, a dangerous electric curiosity. "Unbind him," Jian orders softly. The guards hesitate, but at Jian's dark glare, they unlock the heavy iron chains. The metal hits the stone floor with a loud clang. Kael rubs his raw, bleeding wrists, never breaking eye contact with the prince. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't have to. The promise in his eyes is clear. "I will slit your throat the moment I have the chance." "Follow me, Shadow," Jian says, his voice a low velvet hum. He turns his back on the deadliest assassin in the room, showing a terrifying level of confidence, and walks out into the stormy night. Kael watches the sweep of the prince's crimson robes. He clenches his jaw, steps over his broken chains, and follows. The first few weeks are a silent, suffocating war. Kael is given the room right next to the prince's massive bedchamber. He is given a perfectly forged sword, dark robes that blend into the night, and one simple order: never let the prince out of your sight. It's a twisted, cruel irony. The man who destroyed Kael's family now sleeps with his neck exposed, just a few feet away, trusting Kael to protect him. Or perhaps Jian doesn't trust him at all. Perhaps Jian just wants to play a game. One night, about a month into Kael's servitude, the tension finally snaps. It is well past midnight. The palace is dead quiet, save for the rhythmic chirping of crickets in the imperial gardens. Prince Jian is sitting at his low wooden desk, reading military scrolls by the faint, golden glow of a single candle. His long black hair is unbound, cascading over his broad shoulders like dark water. He is wearing only his inner robes of thin, white silk, casually draped open at the collar, revealing the strong, smooth lines of his chest. Kael stands in the shadows in the corner of the room, as silent as a statue. He has been watching the prince for 4 hours, watching the way Jian's brow furrows when he reads something displeasing, watching the slow, steady rise and fall of his chest, watching the pulse beat in the side of his neck. It would be so easy. Kael's hand rests on the hilt of his sword. One step, one draw, one strike. Wei would be avenged. The silence stretches, thick and heavy. Then, without looking up from his scroll, Jian speaks. His voice is deep, vibrating through the quiet room. Your breathing has changed. It is heavier. Your heartbeat has accelerated. Jian slowly rolls up the scroll, his long, elegant fingers resting on the parchment. You are thinking about doing it, aren't you? Kael freezes. His grip tightens on his sword. I don't know what your highness means. Jian chuckles. It's a dark, bitter sound. He stands up from the desk, turns, and walks slowly toward the corner where Kael is hiding in the dark. Kael's breath catches in his throat as the prince steps into his personal space. Jian is taller than him, broader. The faint smell of sandalwood and something distinctly masculine and warm washes over Kael. Jian stops just inches away, so close that Kael can feel the heat radiating from his body. Draw the sword, Kael, Jian whispers, his voice dropping an octave. Kael glares up at him, his chest heaving slightly. Do not mock me. I am not mocking you. Jian's dark eyes trail down to Kael's lips, then back up to his eyes. Slowly, deliberately, Jian reaches out. His large, warm hand covers Kael's smaller, calloused hand, where it rests on the hilt of the sword. Kael shivers. He hates himself for it, but the sudden, burning heat of the prince's skin against his sends a violent shockwave through his body. Jian guides Kael's hand, slowly pulling the blade from its sheath. The soft shung of the steel is deafening in the quiet room. Jian brings the razor-sharp edge of Kael's sword right up to his own neck. He presses it just enough that a tiny, single drop of dark red blood beads on his pale skin. Do it, Jian breathes, his eyes locked onto Kael's. There is no fear in the prince's gaze, only a crushing, desperate exhaustion. Take your revenge. End this miserable dynasty. End me. Kael's hand is trembling. His mind screams at him to push the blade forward, to slice through the flesh of the enemy. But as he looks into Jian's eyes, he doesn't see a cruel tyrant. He sees a man who is entirely, utterly alone. A man who has been used as a weapon his entire life, begging for someone to finally break him. The sword shakes in Kael's grip. He swallows hard, his eyes flickering down to the drop of blood on Jian's throat, then to the exposed, pale skin of his chest. The proximity is dizzying. Jian's breath fans across Kael's face. You are a coward, Jian whispers, stepping even closer, until his chest presses against the flat of the blade. Or, perhaps you don't hate me as much as you want to. Shut up, Kael snarls, his voice shaking with raw emotion. Before Jian can say another word, Kael yanks the sword away, sheathes it with a violent crack, and turns his face to the wall, chest heaving. My life belongs to the Emperor. If I kill you, I die, and I am not ready to die yet. It's a lie. They both know it's a lie. Jian stares at Kael's back for a long, heavy moment. He lifts a hand, wiping the single drop of blood from his neck. A strange, unreadable emotion flashes in his dark eyes. Very well, my shadow, Jian says softly, his voice thick with a new, dangerous kind of tension. Keep telling yourself that. From that night on, something shifts between them. The hostility is still there, but it is no longer cold. It is boiling hot. It becomes a game of silent observation, a dance of forbidden proximity. When Jian trains in the courtyard with his spear, Kael watches. He tells himself he is just studying the enemy's weaknesses, but his eyes linger on the way the sweat makes the thin training robes cling to Jian's muscular back. He notices the raw power in Jian's thighs, the graceful, deadly arc of his waist as he moves. And Jian? Jian knows Kael is watching. Sometimes, after a particularly brutal strike, Jian will pause, breathing heavily, and look directly up at the roof where Kael is perched. Jian will hold his gaze, wiping the sweat from his lower lip with the back of his hand, a slow, knowing smirk playing on his face. It drives Kael insane. The banter between them becomes sharper, edged with a biting sarcasm that hides something much deeper. Your stance is too wide, Your Highness. Kael murmurs one afternoon as they stand alone in the armory. Kael is polishing his daggers. Jian is inspecting a row of longbows. A quick opponent would sweep your legs from under you before you could blink. Jian glances over his shoulder, his eyes lazily dragging over Kael's body. Is that so? Are you offering to sweep me off my feet, Kael? Kael's breath hitches, a sudden flush of heat rising to the tips of his ears. He grips the dagger tighter. I am offering to put you on your back in the dirt, where you belong. Jian turns fully, leaning against the wooden weapon rack, crossing his arms. The silk of his sleeves falls back, revealing his strong forearms. I accept the challenge. Come here. Kael's heart hammers against his ribs. He sets the dagger down. He steps onto the training mat. They don't use weapons. This is purely hand-to-hand. Jian strikes first, fast and ruthless. Kael dodges, pivoting on his heel, and grabs Jian's wrist, twisting it to use the prince's momentum against him. But Jian is heavier, stronger. Instead of falling, Jian steps inside Kael's guard, his arm wrapping tightly around Kael's waist. They crash onto the mat together in a tangle of limbs and dark fabrics. Kael hits the ground hard, the breath knocking out of his lungs. Before he can recover, Jian is straddling him, pinning both of Kael's wrists above his head with one massive hand. Kael struggles, his hips bucking up instinctively to dislodge the prince, but the movement only causes their bodies to grind together in a way that makes them both instantly freeze. The silence in the armory becomes deafening. Kael is panting, his chest heaving against Jian's. His silver hair is splayed out on the mat like a halo. He glares up at the prince, but the anger in his eyes is melting, replaced by a dark, wide-eyed panic. Jian's face is inches from his. The prince is breathing just as heavily. His gaze drops from Kael's golden eyes to his parted, slightly swollen lips. Jian's grip on Kael's wrist softens, but he doesn't let go. His thumb slowly, almost unconsciously, strokes the sensitive skin on the inside of Kael's wrist, right over his racing pulse. Kael shudders under the touch. He should push him off. He should curse at him, but he can't speak. The scent of pine, sweat, and warm skin is intoxicating. You see, Kael, Jian whispers, his voice thick and rough, sending a vibration straight through Kael's chest. I am already on top, as I always will be. Kael swallows hard, his voice barely a breath. Get off me. Jian doesn't move for a long, agonizing second. He just stares at Kael's lips, his own breath ghosting over Kael's skin. For a terrifying moment, Kael thinks Jian is going to lean down and kiss him, and the most terrifying part of all, Kael realizes he wouldn't pull away. But then, the heavy wooden doors of the armory rattle. A servant's voice calls out from outside. Your Highness, the imperial banquet is beginning. The spell breaks. Jian's eyes clear, the cold mask slamming back into place. He lets go of Kael's wrists, standing up gracefully, smoothing out his robes as if nothing happened. Dress well tonight, my shadow, Jian says coldly, not looking back. There are many vipers in the court. Keep your eyes open. Kael lies on the mat for a moment longer, his heart beating so fast he feels sick. He touches his own wrist where Jian's hand had been. The skin feels like it's burning. And if you are enjoying this forbidden royal tension, remember, my friends, the extended and uncensored 18+ continuation is available on Patreon at SpicyAncientBL. If you want to know exactly what happens when the doors lock and the royal protocols are thrown away, that is where you need to be. The link is in the description and pinned comment. The Imperial Banquet is a dizzying display of wealth, deceit, and poison wrapped in silk. Hundreds of lanterns hang from the ceiling, casting a warm, deceptive glow over the nobles laughing and drinking heavily. Women with painted faces play stringed instruments in the center of the hall. The air smells of roasted meats, sweet wine, and heavy perfumes. Prince Jian sits at his low table near the emperor, a cup of wine casually held in his hand. He looks bored, beautiful, deadly, and bored. Several young nobles and concubines try to catch his eye, offering coy smiles and lingering glances. Kael stands hidden in the shadowed pillars right behind Jian. He watches the people fawning over the prince, and a strange, bitter, ugly feeling claws at his stomach. Jealousy. It's absurd. He hates this man. He shouldn't care who looks at him. But when a particularly beautiful noble lord leans close to Jian, whispering something in the prince's ear and touching his shoulder, Kael's hand instinctively drops to the hilt of his dagger. Jian's eyes subtly flick to the shadows, catching Kael's movement. A tiny, almost invisible smirk touches the corner of Jian's mouth. He politely pushes the noble lord away, never taking his eyes off the dark pillar where Kael is hiding. The silent conversation is interrupted by a sudden change in the wind. Kael's instincts, honed from years of surviving assassinations, scream at him. The music is too loud. The dancers are moving too close to the royal tables. One of the dancers, a man in flowing blue silks, suddenly spins out of formation. From the sleeve of his robe, he draws a thin, jagged blade, gleaming with dark purple poison. He lunges directly at Prince Jian. Everything happens in a fraction of a second. The guards are too far away. Jian, having drank heavily, is half a second too slow to draw his own sword. But Kael is already moving. He doesn't think. He doesn't remember the ruined kingdom of Wei. He doesn't remember his hatred. He only sees the blade moving toward the man who smelled of pine and sandalwood. Kael throws himself between Jian and the assassin. He drives his dagger into the assassin's throat, a lethal, perfect strike. But the momentum of the dancer's lunge carries forward. The poisoned blade slices deep into Kael's side, tearing through his dark robes and biting into his flesh. Kael gasps, a sharp, ragged sound, as the assassin collapses dead on the floor. The banquet hall erupts into pure chaos. Women scream. Guards rush forward, drawing swords. The emperor shouts something, but it all sounds like water rushing in Kael's ears. The poison is fast. Too fast. Ice shoots through Kael's veins, his vision instantly blurring at the edges. His knees buckle beneath him. Before he can hit the cold stone floor, strong arms catch him. Kael blinks rapidly, his head falling back against a broad chest. It's Jian. The Crown Prince is kneeling on the floor of the Grand Hall, surrounded by panicked nobles, cradling his shadow guard in his arms. Jian's face is completely devoid of its usual coldness. He looks utterly terrified. Kael, Jian says, his voice cracking. He presses his hand tightly against the bleeding wound on Kael's side. The dark blood is already seeping through Jian's pristine, expensive royal robes, staining the crimson silk even darker. Kael, look at me. Your Highness, Kael mumbles, his golden eyes fluttering. His skin is already turning pale, a sickening gray hue taking over his features. Your stance was too wide again. Shut up! Don't speak, Jian snarls, though his hands are trembling violently. He looks up at the Imperial Guards. Get the royal physician, now! If he dies, I will execute every single one of you. The Emperor stands from his throne, looking down at his son with deep disgust. Jian, control yourself. It is just a dog. A guard. Let him bleed out. Jian freezes. Slowly, he turns his head to look at his father. The look in the prince's eyes is so dark, so filled with absolute demonic fury, that the entire hall falls dead silent. If this man dies, Jian says, his voice a low, terrifying whisper that echoes across the silent room, I will burn this entire palace to the ground. Without waiting for permission, Jian scoops Kael up in his arms. The prince ignores protocol, ignores the gasps of the nobles, ignores the emperor's furious shouts. He carries Kael out of the banquet hall, running through the rainy courtyards toward his private chambers, his heart hammering against Kael's fading pulse. The next 3 days are a nightmare of fever, blood, and boiling water. The physician manages to draw the worst of the poison out, but Kael is left hovering on the brink of death. Jian does not sleep. He does not eat. He refuses to let any servant touch Kael. The Crown Prince of the Yan Empire rolls up his sleeves, wrings out the cloth in the basin of warm water, and gently bathes his guard's feverish, sweat-drenched body himself. It is the third night. The storm outside has finally broken, leaving a quiet, steady rain tapping against the paper windows. The only light in the room comes from the dying embers in the hearth. Jian sits on the edge of the large, silk-draped bed. Kael is lying in the center of it, swallowed by the luxurious bedding. Kael's chest is bare, wrapped in thick white bandages that stand out against his flushed, pale skin. Jian dips a clean piece of cloth into cool water, leaning over to gently wipe the sweat from Kael's collarbone. His touch is impossibly tender. He trails the cloth down Kael's chest, tracing the line of his stomach, stopping just above the bandages. Jian's eyes are dark, filled with a heavy, painful longing. He traces the scars on Kael's arms, scars from the war Jian's family started. Why did you do it? Jian whispers into the quiet room, his voice raspy from exhaustion. You could have let me die. You should have let me die. You foolish, beautiful creature. A weak, raspy voice breaks the silence. If you die, who will I annoy? Jian's head snaps up. Kael's golden eyes are half open, heavily lidded and glassy with fever, but looking right at him. Jian exhales a shaky breath, closing his eyes for a second as a wave of overwhelming relief washes over him. He leans closer, his hand coming up to gently cup Kael's cheek. The skin is still too hot, but Kael leans into the touch instinctively. You are awake, Jian murmurs, his thumb brushing over Kael's lower lip. Water, Kael breathes. Jian immediately reaches for the cup on the bedside table. He slides one strong arm under Kael's shoulders, carefully lifting him up. Kael groans in pain, his body instinctively pressing flush against Jian's chest for support. Jian brings the cup to Kael's lips, letting him drink slowly. The physical closeness is staggering. Kael is weak, vulnerable, relying entirely on the man he swore to kill. When he finishes drinking, Kael rests his forehead against Jian's shoulder, too exhausted to pull away. Jian's arm tightens around him. He buries his face in Kael's silver hair, breathing in the scent of him. "Don't ever do that again," Jian whispers fiercely, his voice shaking. "Do you hear me? Your life is not yours to throw away. It is mine." Kael lets out a weak, breathy laugh. He turns his head slightly, his lips brushing against the bare skin of Jian's neck. He feels Jian violently shudder at the contact. "You are so arrogant, Your Highness," Kael murmurs, looking up. Their faces are mere inches apart. The air between them is so thick it feels like gravity itself has shifted. The hostility is completely gone, melted away by the fever and the blood. All that is left is the raw, agonizing truth they have been hiding for months. Jian's eyes drop to Kael's lips. "I am not arrogant," he whispers, leaning in a fraction of an inch closer. "I am terrified." "Of what?" Kael breathes, his heart beginning to race, pounding against Jian's chest. "Of this," Jian says. And then, very slowly, as if giving Kael every chance to turn away, Jian bridges the gap. He doesn't kiss him. Not yet. He just rests his forehead against Kael's, their noses brushing. They share the same breath. Kael's eyes flutter shut, his hand weakly coming up to grip the silk of Jian's robes. He pulls Jian closer, a silent, desperate demand. Jian lets out a low groan, tilting his head, his lips just a ghost of a touch away from Kael's. Knock. 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 The sharp sound on the heavy wooden doors shatters the fragile moment into a million pieces. Jian pulls back, his chest heaving, his eyes wild and dark with interrupted desire. Kael falls back against the pillows, gasping for air, feeling cold instantly without Jian's body heat. "Your Highness," comes the voice of the head eunuch from outside, "an imperial decree from the Emperor. You are ordered to the throne room immediately." Jian clenches his jaw. He looks down at Kael, his expression hardening back into the mask of the cold Crown Prince. But his hand lingers on Kael's cheek for 1 second longer. "Rest," Jian commands softly. "I will handle my father." The throne room is empty except for the Emperor, sitting in the shadows like a venomous spider. Jian kneels, his face devoid of emotion. "You humiliated me at the banquet," the Emperor says, his voice a deadly hiss. "You caused a scene over a dying dog. The court is whispering, Jian. They are saying the Crown Prince has gone soft, that he is bewitched by a prisoner of war." "He saved my life, Imperial Father," Jian replies evenly. "It is a matter of honor." "Honor?" The Emperor laughs. He stands up, walking down the steps, a scroll in his hand. "Honor does not keep a throne, my son. Fear does. You have let this boy get too close. I see the way you look at him. It is pathetic." The Emperor throws the scroll at Jian's feet. "This is an execution order," the Emperor says. "Sign it with your seal. By tomorrow's sunrise, you will take that boy to the courtyard, and you will cut off his head yourself. If you do not, I will declare you unfit to rule, strip you of your title, and I will have my royal guard tear him limb from limb. The choice is yours." Jian stares at the scroll on the floor. His blood runs completely cold. The monster who raised him has finally backed him into a corner. "Do you understand, Jian?" The Emperor smiles cruelly. "Prove to me you are ruthless enough to wear the crown. Kill what you love." Jian slowly looks up. His eyes are dead, empty, a terrifying void. "I understand, Imperial Father," Jian says, his voice perfectly smooth. He picks up the scroll. "By tomorrow's sunrise, the problem will be eliminated." The night feels impossibly long. Kael is awake when Jian finally returns to the bedchamber. The prince looks exhausted, his shoulders heavy, his face pale. Jian walks over to the table, pours 2 cups of wine, and walks toward the bed. He sits on the edge, handing 1 cup to Kael. "Drink," Jian says softly. "It will ease the pain." Kael takes the cup. He looks at Jian's face, reading the deep, tragic shadow in the prince's eyes. Kael knows the politics of this palace. He knows what happened in that throne room, even without being told. "He ordered you to kill me," Kael says flatly. "It is not a question." Jian doesn't deny it. He stares down into his wine. "If I don't, he will send the Imperial Guard. They will slaughter you, and he will take my claim to the throne." Silence falls over the room. It is a heavy, suffocating silence. Kael looks down at his cup. Strangely, he isn't afraid. He is just tired. Then do it, Kael whispers. He sets the cup aside and looks up at Jian, his golden eyes clear and resolute. You are the Crown Prince. Your duty is to the Empire. I am just a ghost of a dead kingdom. I should have died 3 months ago anyway. Do it, Jian. It is the first time Kael has ever used the prince's name. Jian's hand begins to shake. The silver cup in his grip crushes slightly under the immense pressure of his fingers. Suddenly, Jian throws his cup across the room. It shatters against the far wall, wine spraying across the pristine white silk screens like a splatter of dark blood. Kael flinches. Jian turns to him, his face twisted in raw, desperate agony. The cold mask is gone, completely shattered. Damn the Empire, Jian snarls, his voice breaking. He suddenly leans forward, grabbing Kael by the shoulders, pulling him up into a desperate, crushing embrace. Damn the Empire. Damn my father. Do you think I care about any of it? I have lived my entire life in the dark, covered in blood, pretending to be a monster, and then you came. Jian buries his face in the crook of Kael's neck. Kael can feel the prince trembling. The great, terrifying Crown Prince of Jian is holding on to him like a drowning man. You are the only thing in this cursed world that makes me feel alive, Jian whispers brokenly against Kael's skin, his hot breath sending shivers down Kael's spine. I will not kill you. I will burn this entire empire to ash before I let them touch a single hair on your head. Kael's eyes fill with tears. He slowly lifts his arms, wrapping them around Jian's broad back, burying his fingers in the prince's dark hair. He pulls Jian closer, his heart breaking for the man he was supposed to hate. Jian, Kael breathes, his own tears slipping down his cheeks. If you don't obey him, they will kill us both. Jian pulls back just enough to look into Kael's eyes. His gaze is no longer desperate. It is filled with a cold, terrifying resolve, the look of a true emperor. No, Jian says darkly, they won't, because my father made one fatal mistake. He forgot who commands the Shadow Guard. Jian reaches into his robes and pulls out a small, heavy black jade token, the seal of the Imperial Shadows. Tonight, Jian says, his voice dropping into a deadly, intimate whisper, the Emperor dies in his sleep. Kael stares at him, realizing the magnitude of what Jian is saying. He is choosing treason. He is throwing away the peaceful succession. He is tearing his own family apart for him. Are you sure? Kael asks, his voice trembling. Once you cross this line, there is no turning back. Jian reaches up, his large hands cupping Kael's face gently. His thumbs wipe away the tears on Kael's cheeks. I crossed the line the moment you held a sword to my throat, and I realized I wanted you to kiss me instead, Jian whispers. And this time, there are no knocks on the door, no hesitations. Jian leans in and captures Kael's lips. The kiss is explosive. It is desperate, hungry, and filled with months of repressed, agonizing tension. Kael gasps into the kiss, his hands gripping Jian's shoulders tightly as the prince's tongue sweeps into his mouth, tasting of sweet wine and dark promises. Jian pushes Kael back gently against the pillows, mindful of his wound, his body hovering over Kael's. The kiss deepens, becoming wet and heavy, completely consuming them both. The next morning, the sun rises over the Jian Empire, but the world has changed. The palace bells ring a deep, mournful toll. The emperor is dead, passed away tragically in his sleep from a sudden illness. In the grand throne room, the court officials kneel in terrified silence. They are surrounded not by regular soldiers, but by the shadow guards, their blades drawn and gleaming in the morning light. Sitting on the golden throne is the new Emperor Jian. He wears robes of absolute black and gold. His face is a perfect, terrifying mask of authority. He looks down at the trembling nobles, his dark eyes commanding absolute submission. But behind the throne, standing in the shadows, is Kael. He is dressed in dark, elegant silks, an intricate silver sword at his hip. He is fully healed, radiant, and dangerous. The nobles whisper. They know Kael is not just a guard anymore. They see the way the new emperor glances over his shoulder. They see the softening of the emperor's eyes when he looks at the silver-haired man. They know that to cross Kael is to invite the wrath of the deadliest ruler the Jian Empire has ever seen. Later that night, when the heavy doors of the inner palace are finally locked and the world is shut away, Jian walks into his private chambers. He strips off the heavy golden crown, tossing it carelessly onto the table. He turns to find Kael standing by the window, bathed in the moonlight. Jian approaches him silently from behind. He wraps his strong arms around Kael's waist, pulling Kael's back flush against his broad chest. Jian buries his face in Kael's neck, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to the pulse point there. The empire is mine, Jian murmurs, his hand slowly tracing the line of Kael's stomach beneath the silk robes. and you are mine. Kael leans back into the embrace, letting out a soft sigh as Jian's lips trail up to his ear. Kael turns his head, catching Jian's lips in a slow, deep, sensual kiss. Forever, Your Majesty, Kael whispers against his mouth. And that, my friends, is where we leave them in the light. But if you want to know what happens next in the dark, if you want the next part, the uncensored continuation of this night, and more unlimited 18+ Ancient Royal BL stories, come join Spicy Ancient BL on Patreon, because let me tell you, when the Emperor locks those doors, the real story has just begun. The link is waiting for you in the description and pinned comment. Go find it, support the creation of these stories, and I will see you there for the deeply passionate, unrestricted ending. Thank you for listening, my friends. Until next time, keep dreaming in the shadows.